If the US and China go to war, who loses? Hour-by-hour breakdown. It starts with a single spark of standoff in the South China Sea, a miscalculated move, or a sudden strike. Within minutes, the world's two most powerful nations are at war, and every hour that follows pushes the globe closer to chaos. This isn't just speculation. Military analysts have run the simulations, wargamed the scenarios, and broken it all down, hour by hour, move by move, to see what would really happen if the US and China went head-to-head in full-scale conflict. Would it stay regional or spiral into global disaster? Who gains ground in the skies? Who controls the seas? And most critically, who loses the most and how fast? Stick around as we walk through the chilling timeline of a hypothetical war between America and China, a modern conflict that could change everything we know about power, peace, and survival. Hour zero. The room is still tense with anticipation. Inside his high-security office, Xi Jinping sits flanked by his most loyal advisors. This is the moment he's been preparing for. Over the past decade, he's funneled billions into modernizing China's military machine. Now it's one of the most powerful forces on the planet. He's armed with roughly 500 nuclear warheads. He commands the largest navy in the world by sheer size, and on top of that, over 2.3 million active military personnel are ready to move at his command. His goal? Bring war to the United States. But Xi isn't reckless. He knows storming America head-on would be suicide. The U.S. has nearly 190 military bases scattered across Japan and South Korea alone, not to mention a smaller but deadlier navy armed to the teeth. If he wants to reach American shores, he has to punch a path through the Pacific first. So the war won't begin with missiles or fighter jets. It starts with something quieter, deadlier in its subtlety. For years, China has been sharpening its cyber weapons, building elite teams of hackers capable of infiltrating and disrupting America's most critical infrastructure. They've had some wins. They've also had some setbacks. In late 2023, the U.S. caught them using a botnet hidden inside home routers, codenamed KV, to mask cyber intrusions. The network was dismantled. Embarrassing, sure, but Xi's plan is already in motion. He gives the order. Dozens of cyber attacks are launched within minutes. The targets? American water treatment plants, power grids, and communications hubs, especially those near key military installations. They even strike at private companies tied to U.S. defense contracts. Every hit is calculated. Every disruption is timed to sow maximum confusion. Most critical of all, they go after systems and supply chains that the U.S. would rely on to send aid to Taiwan. Because for Xi, Taiwan is more than just a symbolic prize. It's the key to the Pacific. By taking the island, he can break the chain of U.S.-aligned nations, Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and carve out a clear corridor toward the American mainland. Hour one. The U.S. is reeling. They've dealt with Chinese cyber attacks before, but nothing on this scale. Vault Typhoon, a notorious Chinese hacker group, had already proven how deeply China had embedded itself into America's digital veins. Rail networks, ports, mass transit, even pipelines, they were all vulnerable. Though Vault Typhoon was eventually shut down, the sheer scope of today's attacks reveals something chilling. They were just one of many. For hours, America is forced to play defense, chasing shadows in its own systems. And that's exactly what China needs. Xi moves to the next phase. He gives the go-ahead to the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, the PLARF. 120,000 soldiers, 6 massive missile bases, and the crown jewel, an estimated 4,000 missiles, many of them designed to strike moving ships at sea, others to hit fixed military targets with terrifying precision. This is where the war turns hot. The first target is Taiwan. Missiles rain down across the island. From bases in Longchang, Jiangsu, and Wuhan, squadrons of Shenyang J-16 fighters scream into the sky, launching wave after wave of attacks. Taiwanese air defenses scramble, but they're overwhelmed. This isn't just an invasion, it's a statement. Then comes the biggest challenge, the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Its massive 200 ships, 1,500 aircraft, and 150,000 personnel. It's also Xi's biggest obstacle. The fleet stretches across half the globe, from the Arctic to the Antarctic, patrolling the vast Pacific and Indian Oceans. To clear a path to the American homeland, that fleet must be neutralized, and Xi Jinping is ready to try. Hour 2. Xi Jinping knows he can't wipe out the entire U.S. Pacific Fleet, not in one go, but he doesn't have to. All he needs is to hit the right spots early to cripple America's ability to hit back fast. His strategy? A calculated, three-pronged missile assault that will shape the course of this war from the very start. Step 1. Take out the bases. The U.S. has a massive presence in the region, nearly 200 bases spread across Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines, with close to 80,000 troops ready to deploy. If he doesn't hit them now, Xi risks an immediate counterpunch. He can't afford that. It's a gamble. Firing missiles into these allied nations might drag all three directly into the war alongside the United States. But the alternative, doing nothing, would be even more dangerous. And so, the skies ignite. Waves of Dongfeng 26 missiles streak toward American bases in Japan and South Korea. Known as the carrier killer, the DF-26 has a reach of nearly 2,500 miles, more than enough to hit hard and deep. Alongside them, China launches shorter-range DF-16s, saving some of the longer-range warheads for later phases of the assault. These strikes are just the beginning. Step 2. Strike closer to the U.S. homeland. Guam, the gateway to the Pacific for America, becomes the next target. Chinese missiles rain down on Andersen Air Force Base and Naval Base Guam, hoping to take out key refueling and support stations that would otherwise serve as lifelines to Taiwan. Then Xi unleashes his ace, the DF-27, a hypersonic missile capable of dodging U.S. missile defenses. It tears through the upper atmosphere at blistering speeds, hurtling toward targets in Hawaii. The DF-27 is more than just a weapon, it's Xi's signal that no place is safe, not even paradise. Step 3. Go after the ships. Out at sea, U.S. cruisers like the USS Shiloh and USS Mobile Bay prowl the waters near China. There are 9 of them in total, heavily armed, shielded with advanced anti-air systems, and more than capable of retaliating. Xi wants them gone. Behind them, dozens of U.S. Navy destroyers, weight slightly lighter, but still packing enough firepower to inflict serious damage on the Chinese fleet if left unchecked. Xi knows he can't sink them all, but every ship he takes down now makes his eventual invasion of Taiwan, and maybe even the American mainland, a little more possible. But there's a complication. Not all of Xi's digital sabotage worked. U.S. cyber systems are battered but not broken. And more importantly, America's missile defense is still online. From low orbit, DSP satellites operated by the U.S. Space Force detect the missile launches almost instantly. President Biden is alerted. There's no time to hesitate. 44 ground-based interceptors, GBIs, most stationed in Alaska, a few more in California, stand ready to intercept incoming threats, even those flying at 15,000 miles per hour. They're some of the most advanced systems on Earth, designed to stop ICBMs in their tracks. And then the looming question, is this nuclear? For a tense moment, the war room goes still. Advisors pore over satellite data. No ICBMs are heading toward DC or other key mainland targets. The flight paths suggest a conventional strike, not nuclear, at least not yet. Still, the stakes are enormous. Troops are evacuated from bases in the Pacific. Others dig in, bracing for impact. For now, America must rely on its early warning systems and interceptor missiles. A counterstrike will come, but right now, survival is the priority. His missiles streak toward Okinawa, home to the largest concentration of American troops in Japan. Defenses light up the sky, shooting many out of the air, but not all. There are simply too many. Explosions rip through Kadena Air Base. F-15 fighters, E-3 Sentry radar planes, and KC-135 Stratotankers. America's airborne gas stations are caught in the chaos. Those Stratotankers are critical. Without them, U.S. jets can't refuel mid-flight. It's a clever, brutal blow. The damage is staggering. Thousands of U.S. personnel are killed or wounded in the opening salvos. Yet even with the devastation, Xi knows something crucial. The bases are not entirely knocked out. They're wounded, but they're not dead. And that means the war is just beginning. Xi Jinping isn't ready to put boots on American soil just yet. That's still down the line. For now, his main goal is to keep U.S. air power grounded. Even though some American bases survived the initial strike, Xi's counting on them staying crippled just for a few days. That's all he needs to press his advantage. More missiles are now streaking across the Pacific sky, this time targeting American cruisers and destroyers still afloat. These warships are tough targets, not just because they're built for battle, but because they're moving, fast and unpredictably. U.S. command has ordered them to zigzag, shift courses, and stay mobile to throw off China's targeting systems. The tactic works for some. Others aren't so lucky. When the smoke clears, nearly half of the U.S. cruisers are gone, and dozens of destroyers have been hit or sunk. It's not total devastation, but for Xi, it's enough. The field has been thinned. Then the big ones close in. China's DF-27 and DF-26 hypersonic missiles scream toward Hawaii. California's missile defenses shoot dozens out of the sky, but not all. Several get through, slamming into ships like the USS Frankie Peterson and USS Hopper, sending fireballs into the ocean air. Xi had hoped to catch America's 13 nuclear submarines in port and destroy them outright. But those captains were a step ahead. They dove deep before the missiles hit, disappearing into the depths, ready to resurface when America's ready to strike back. By the end of the first few hours, Xi has fired off nearly a quarter of his 4,000 missile arsenal. U.S. bases across Asia are burning. Japan and South Korea, dragged into the conflict, are now officially at war with China. America's Pacific Fleet is bloodied. Its communications are still scrambled from China's cyber attack. Its full response? Delayed. And that's exactly the breathing room Xi needed. With America stunned and scrambling, Xi turns to his true target, Taiwan. For 24 hours, the island has been bombarded. Hundreds of short-range missiles have hammered its defenses. Smaller outlying islands are already lost, but Taiwan isn't falling easily. U.S.-made Patriot missile systems and Taiwan's own Skybu interceptors have held their own, shooting down wave after wave of incoming fire. Xi knows the clock is ticking. He can't bomb Taiwan forever, not if he plans to land troops. At some point, the barrage has to stop, or he risks friendly fire killing his own soldiers. So now he takes stock. The first wave of strikes across Asia and the Pacific has worked. America's response is delayed, and Taiwan's coastal defenses are weakened. Chinese fighter jets from Longchang, Jiangsu, and Wuhan are keeping Taiwan's air force on defense. The invasion clock is ticking, and Xi is ready to move. But there's a problem. Landing options are tight. President Tsai Ing-wen has spent months preparing for this exact scenario. China's recent war games in the Taiwan Strait were all the warning she needed. As soon as the first missiles launched, she activated every defense plan on the books. To the east, Taiwan's cliffs rise like natural fortresses. Xi might try to blockade this side with his navy, but a full landing? Unlikely. Still, Tsai isn't taking chances. Troops are in position. If the Chinese dare to climb those steep, 15% grade cliffs, they'll be met with bullets, and if necessary, the roads winding through those cliffs will be destroyed. But it's the West Coast where the real battle will happen. That's the shortest path from China to Taiwan. Tsai knows it, so do her generals. She's locked down all 15 major ports and harbors on that side, ready to blow them up if China gets close. She's determined no Chinese flag will be planted on Taiwanese soil without a fight. The beaches? Fortified to hell and back. Barbed wire, landmines, tank traps. The waters leading in are shallow, less than 50 feet deep, which means China can't mass deploy. They'll have to ferry troops in slowly, under heavy fire, in small landing boats. A nightmare. And if Chinese forces do make it past the beach, roads to Taipei will be collapsed. They'll have to slog their way through rough terrain, ambushes, and dug-in defenders. Tsai is turning this into a war of attrition. Every inch of land will cost blood. For Xi, that's bad news. Back in Washington, former President Biden is nearly ready to launch America's response. But before the missiles fly, he turns to the weapon Xi fears most: economic pressure. One of China's biggest vulnerabilities? Trade. In 2023 alone, China imported over $2.5 trillion worth of goods. It relies heavily on global commerce, and Biden knows it. The diplomatic stage is now set. Allies are watching, markets are trembling, and Xi knows his clock is ticking too. Taiwan hasn't fallen. The American fleet isn't dead. And now the United States is about to hit back. Hard. Former President Joe Biden has spent the last 3 days doing more than just responding. Militarily, he's been weaving a noose around China's economy, and now it starts to tighten. Leveraging decades of alliances, Biden rallies the United States' global partners into action. One by one, they fall in line. A new kind of blockade begins not with ships, but with sanctions. Brutal ones. Not just from the U.S., but from Europe, Canada, and beyond. China finds itself cut off from nearly every major Western economy. No buying, no selling, no lifeline. Then comes the real hammer blow, oil. China runs on it. Every single day, it imports nearly 12 million barrels just to keep the lights on and the gears turning. 19% comes from Russia. The rest? From U.S.-aligned nations like Saudi Arabia and others in the Middle East and Asia. Now, thanks to fierce diplomatic pressure and rising fears over China's aggression, those taps begin to close. Saudi Arabia hesitates at first, but the long-standing American partnership and regional concerns over Chinese expansionism win out. They stop the flow. Russia tries to step up, offering to plug the gap. But even Vladimir Putin has limits. His war in Ukraine has already left him strapped for resources and under his own set of global sanctions. He can't risk isolating Russia further just to prop up Xi's war. Xi is stunned. He didn't plan for this. Now the clock is ticking, and it's not on America's side, but his. If China can't win this war in a matter of months, its supply lines will dry up. Energy, tech, raw materials gone. Xi is staring down the barrel of an economic suffocation. With China lobbing missiles at U.S. soil, specifically Hawaii, Biden seizes the moment. He calls in his strongest card, NATO. Under Article 5 of the NATO Charter, an attack on one is an attack on all. It doesn't matter if it's in Europe or the Pacific China struck the United States. That makes it everybody's war now, and Biden's not working alone. He's been coordinating with NATO since the first missile launched. The moment the alliance agrees to invoke Article 5, the world's most powerful military coalition joins the fight. That includes 30 allies with decades of training, infrastructure, and firepower now pointed squarely at China. The counterattack's objective is obvious: Taiwan. Xi's lightning strike to take the island has turned into a bloody quagmire. His missiles failed to crush Taiwan's defenses. Now his soldiers are dying by the thousands trying to storm heavily fortified beaches. And that's just the beginning. Even if they break through, they'll be trapped in brutal urban warfare, block by block, street by street, ambushed from buildings and bunkers, cut off from support. Taipei won't fall easily. Xi didn't plan for a long war. Now he's in one. America rallies its naval might. Its response is no longer limited to defense. It's time to go on the offensive. From Australia, where Chinese missiles failed to strike U.S. bases, carrier groups launch. America deploys nearly all of its 11 aircraft carriers, sailing toward the Taiwan Strait. Each one is a floating city of destruction, packed with F-35s, bombers, and support craft. But the U.S. isn't coming alone. From across the Atlantic, the UK's HMS Queen Elizabeth joins the charge, loaded with Typhoon FGR-4s and F-35Bs. Canada commits 6 of its 12 frigates, and Japan, still burning from China's early strikes, sends most of its 36 destroyers to join the fleet. Australia contributes its Navy too, turning the Pacific into a staging ground for the biggest multinational fleet since World War II. Only South Korea hesitates, not out of reluctance to support the U.S., but out of fear. North Korea, always watching, always waiting, might see China's war as its chance to invade the South. It's a strategic gamble. Support the West and risk your own borders. Or wait and hope war doesn't come knocking from the north. Now the world is on edge. The battlefield stretches from Taipei to Tokyo, from the Taiwan Strait to the Persian Gulf. Xi's window for a quick victory has slammed shut. The war he started is becoming a global one. And Biden, he's just getting started. South Korea faces a dangerous dilemma. If it throws its Navy or Air Force into the fight alongside the U.S., it risks leaving its own backyard unguarded, and North Korea is always watching for weakness. Biden knows this. He doesn't pressure Seoul. Instead, South Korea's role becomes clear. Hold the line against the North, keep that powder keg from exploding, while the rest of the world deals with Xi's war. With South Korea on sentry duty, the United States now commands a massive coalition force, ready to challenge China on the seas and in the skies. And now the fleet moves. It's been 2 relentless weeks of Chinese missile strikes. Xi has thrown everything he has at Taiwan. Every beach landing he attempts turns into a bloodbath. Taiwanese forces backed by American equipment and hardened by years of preparation dig in and fight like hell. Sure, Xi is grinding down defenses bit by bit, but every time he takes ground, Taiwan destroys a road, collapses a tunnel, or reroutes a highway, forcing Chinese troops to slog through rough terrain just to reach their objectives. And for the few soldiers who made it to Taipei, they never made it back. Urban combat is chewing them up. This was never supposed to last this long. Xi had banked on a lightning-fast victory storm the island, plant the flag, and force the world to accept it. But now he's stuck in the very war he feared, a drawn-out, high-cost stalemate. In time, it's not on his side. 2 weeks after the first missile fell, the Americans arrive. The U.S. fleet enters the Taiwan Strait, not alone, but with NATO and Japan at its back. These countries aren't just supporting the U.S., they're here for their own reasons. None of them want to live in a world where China dominates the Pacific. China's Navy may be larger on paper, but it can't match the firepower steaming toward it. Even after Xi took out nearly 24 U.S. destroyers in his opening strike, America still has 68 left, more than China, and each one packs more punch. Yes, China has more corvettes and patrol boats, but in this kind of fight, those might as well be speedboats facing off against battleships. Then comes the real game changer, America's Rapid Dragon tactic. Over the past few years, the U.S. has quietly transformed its cargo planes into missile-launching beasts. Planes like the MC-130J, which Xi had dismissed as non-threats, are now unleashing hell from the sky. Inside them, pallets loaded with AGM-158J ASSM cruise missiles, up to 30 per drop. Some of these missiles can hit from over 1,000 miles away, and they carry nearly 1,000 pounds of explosive warhead. One strike can sink a ship. A wave of them, it overwhelms China's entire missile defense grid. The effect is devastating, not just physically, but tactically. The Chinese Navy and its nearby air bases are forced to defend against a missile storm so massive that their defense systems can't keep up. As they scramble to intercept the incoming barrage, precision strikes from U.S. and allied jets slip through the chaos, hammering key targets and clearing the path. Control of the Taiwan Strait begins to shift. Xi's worst fear has become reality. His once clear route into Taiwan is shattered. His beachheads are barely holding. Every new troop he lands faces not just Taiwanese resistance, but attacks from the U.S., Japan, and NATO fleets. And the skies? He's lost them. Truth is, he never really had them. His air force is being outflown, outgunned, and overwhelmed. U.S. and allied pilots now dominate the airspace above the strait, giving Taiwan and its defenders the cover they desperately needed. What began as a bold invasion is quickly turning into a slow-motion collapse. Xi is bleeding troops, ships, and time. Taiwan's Air Force 142 F-16s, many freshly upgraded, is outmatched on paper. China's stealthy J-20 jets come equipped with advanced IRST systems, giving them the upper hand in tracking and targeting. But Taiwan's strategy was never about air dominance. It was about buying time. President Xi knew the Americans were coming. Taiwan used its fighters not to win, but to stall. Just like it used beachhead defenses and gritty urban combat to keep China from flooding Taipei with troops. That delay worked. Now the U.S. Navy is in the Taiwan Strait, and it's not alone. 8 American aircraft carriers have arrived, each packed with up to 75 fighters. That's nearly 600 combat jets, backed by NATO allies and air power from Japan and Australia. Meanwhile, China's key air bases, Longquan, Jiangsu, and Huan, are under constant missile fire. They're so battered, it's a struggle just to get new fighters off the ground. And then there's the U.S.'s secret weapon, Rapid Dragon, cargo planes retrofitted to drop cruise missiles from the sky rained down salvos of AGM-158s, each with nearly 1,000 pounds of high-explosive warheads and precision guidance. These missiles overwhelmed China's air defenses, opening gaps for targeted airstrikes that punch through clean. The Allies start closing the net. China's remaining air and naval forces begin to retreat, cut off from their supply lines. Thousands of Chinese troops are now stranded on Taiwanese soil, isolated, surrounded, and running low on support. Taiwan's forces prepare to wipe them out. And with control of the strait, the U.S. begins landing troops behind enemy lines. What follows is a pincer movement Taiwan, pushing from the front, the U.S. from the rear. Xi's invasion is collapsing, but not without cost. China's submarine fleet is no joke. 6 Shan-class nuclear-powered subs slip through the chaos and sink 2 American aircraft carriers, a major blow. Nearly 150 American fighters are lost with them. Still, the U.S. Navy strikes back. America has fewer submarines, but its crews are elite, and its subs hit hard. Soon, both of China's aircraft carriers are sunk, forced into action after its grounded air bases became unusable. With those ships gone, China's ability to project air power is shattered. Now Xi is forced to face a brutal reality. He's losing. China's navy is in ruins. The once mighty fleet has been reduced to patrol boats and a handful of surviving corvettes and frigates. Xi calls what's left of his fleet back to home waters, bracing for a potential U.S. invasion of the mainland. He never took Taiwan. Worse, by attacking American territory and forces directly, he triggered NATO's Article 5, the clause that says an attack on one is an attack on all. That wasn't just a piece of paper. NATO's response was swift and total. And it wasn't just Europe. Japan, South Korea, and Australia joined in not just out of loyalty to the U.S., but because they knew if China expanded unchecked, they'd be next. Xi miscalculated, badly. Now he faces an unthinkable question. Does he go nuclear? China has around 500 nuclear warheads and several long-range ICBMs. The CSS-4 Mod 2/3 can reach over 8,000 miles, hitting the continental U.S. The DF-41 isn't far behind, but Xi hesitates. A nuclear strike would guarantee mutual annihilation. America's Minuteman III ICBMs might not reach as far, but its submarines and stealth bombers can, and they're capable of unleashing hell on China from beneath the waves or high above the clouds. So Xi backs down. His forces fought hard. Against the U.S. alone, maybe they would have stood a chance. But against the full weight of America plus NATO, plus the Pacific allies, they never stood a chance. Taiwan, resilient, prepared, unbroken, was tougher than Xi imagined. His plan to conquer the island and push further toward the U.S. never even got off the ground. And all the while, America's economic war was bleeding China dry. The sanctions, the trade blockades, the oil cutoffs, it all added up. The Chinese economy withered. Morale crumbled. The people wanted peace. And so the war ends. But peace doesn't mean victory without cost. America wins, but its navy is bloodied. Dozens of ships lost. Years of rebuilding ahead. And now the U.S., along with NATO, must manage a shattered China, imposing military limits and preventing another future flashpoint. Still, there's no mistaking what just happened. America's strategy of global cooperation of allies bound by trust and treaty worked. And any nation thinking of challenging that alliance in the future, they've been put on notice. Of course, this is just one possible outcome in a U.S. China war. And yes, it's optimistic for the West. So what could China do differently? Could the U.S. count on NATO in Asia for support in a real conflict? Or would politics and hesitation leave America more isolated? Let us know what you think in the comments.